The Cytoskeleton by Sanja, Gianna, Chase, and Sarah. The Merriam-Webster definition of the cytoskeleton is the network of protein filaments and microtubules in the cytoplasm that controls cell shape, maintain intracellular organization, and are involved in cell movement. One analogy to help remember this is the frame of a building. Just like the frame of a building, the cytoskeleton is the frame of the cell, keeping structures in place, providing support, and giving the cell a definite shape.
The first of the two components to the cytoskeleton are the fibers. The cytoskeleton contains three main fibers. The three main fibers of a cytoskeleton are microfilaments, intermediate filaments, and microtubules. These structures give the cell its shape and help organize the cell's parts. They also provide a basis for movement and cell division. First is microfilaments. These are the thinnest of the cytoskeleton, at only 7 nanometers thick. Microfilaments are single bits of the skeleton made up of two protein subunits that are spun together. That protein is called actin, which, as we know, is a very important part of muscle contractions. Microfilaments are involved in cytoplasmic streaming, which moves chloroplasts around the cell, cytokinesis, which is the splitting of two cells, and orientation of the chloroplast. Microfilaments can grow and shrink as more protein subunits are added or removed. It can be found in the cell cortex, which regulates the shape and the movement of the cell surface.
The next type of fiber found in the cytoskeleton is intermediate filaments. These filaments are elongated, non-globular, and are associated in an antipolar manner. These filaments are only found in complex multicellular organisms. The intermediate filaments are encoded by genes and are categorized into different groups based on their amino acid sequences. As a result, they are made up of a variety of different proteins like keratin, mimetin, desmin, and lamin. The protein that the intermediate filament is made up of is dependent on the type of cell it is in. All intermediate filaments are found in the cytoplasm except for lamin. Lamin is found in the nucleus to help support the envelope that surrounds it. The intermediate filaments are mostly for structural purposes like maintaining cell shape, bearing tension, and providing structural support for the cell. They have no role in cell movement. For example, collagen is found in our skin cells to help protect our skin from lots of wear and tear. Another protein that is familiar to us is keratin. The intermediate filaments with keratin help strengthen our hair and nails. Since intermediate filaments are so important to the structural support of our cells, there have been multiple diseases found to be caused by the mutation of intermediate filaments. One disease found to be caused by the mutation of keratin is called loose Anagen syndrome. This causes people to have sparse, short hair that falls out easily. Finally, the last type of fiber found in the cytoskeleton is microtubules. Microtubules are the largest filaments in the cytoskeleton and are mainly used for cell movement. Other functions of microtubules include intracellular trafficking and mitosis. They are composed of one fiber called tubulin. This fiber forms hollow cylindrical structures. Interphase microtubules are involved in the maintenance of cell shape and in the trafficking of proteins and organelles. During mitosis, microtubules form a spindle to enact correct chromosomal segregation. Neurons are highly dependent on microtubules in the early development stages of cells. The coordination and support from microtubules is crucial for newly formed neurons to move appropriately in order to establish neural connections. Abnormalities in neural migration and connectivity due to genetic mutations of microtubules and associated proteins can lead to detrimental developmental defects. Growing evidence suggests that these mutations are associated with many different neurodevelopmental disorders, including intellectual disabilities and autism spectrum disorders. This highlights how important the cytoskeleton, specifically microtubules, are to living organisms. Other examples of microtubules include cilia and flagella. The flagella help propel cells like sperm forward. Cilia also contributes to the movement of unicellular organisms like paramecium.
Now we are going to talk about all of the functions of the cytoskeleton. The four functions of the cytoskeleton are maintaining cell shape, cell movement, holding organelles in place, and strengthening the cell. All of the fibers previously discussed are crucial in carrying out these important functions. The first function of the cytoskeleton is maintaining cell shape. The shape of cells is assisted by the internal structure of the cytoskeleton. The most important fiber in cell shape is the microtubules. The microtubules in the interior of the cell do this by resisting compressive forces that would otherwise completely change the shape of the cell, preventing the cell from carrying out its proper function. One example of the cytoskeleton maintaining cell shape is in red blood cells. As you can see in the picture, the red blood cells are in a disc-like shape, which is due to the cytoskeleton. The cytoskeleton actually increases the surface area to volume ratio, which increases the efficiency of the red blood cell. Without the cytoskeleton, the shape of the red blood cell would be completely different, and the red blood cells would not be able to effectively carry oxygen to all the parts of our body. Another example of the cytoskeleton maintaining cell shape is in the nerve cell. The nerve cell has a very interesting shape. The long skinny piece that you can see in the picture is called the axon. The cytoskeleton is what makes the shape of this cell possible. Again, without this shape, the nerve cell would not be able to carry out its functions of receiving sensory input from the external world, sending motor commands to our muscles, and transforming and relaying the electrical signals. The shape of this cell, made possible by the cytoskeleton, is what makes all of this possible. Now Chase is going to discuss the next function of the cytoskeleton.
Another main function of the cytoskeleton is to help with movement inside and outside of the cell. Within the cell, the cytoskeleton helps move organelles from place to place with the microtubules that form a path for organelles to move along. These microtubules act as railroads and allow the organelles to somewhat walk along them in order to move around. In the picture on the right, the nerve cell is moving the vesicles along the axon towards the end of the cell. This allows them to serve as small transport containers, moving substances around the cell into the cell membrane. Another specific use of the cytoskeleton inside the cell is involved in cytoplasmic streaming. In cytoplasmic streaming, a stream of cytoplasm is created, shifting the chloroplasts around the cell in order to maximize their intake of sunlight to create the most amount of energy possible. In this video, you can see the chloroplasts located around the outside of the cell during cytoplasmic streaming. These chloroplasts will go in circles to get each other the same amount of sunlight. Outside of the cell, the cytoskeleton is used in the form of cilia and flagella, as well as pinching apart cells during mitosis. During cell division, the cytoskeleton pinches the cell in the center and eventually severs them, creating two daughter cells. This process is called cytokinesis. As you can see in the picture, the two halves of the single cell are being pinched together and will eventually be separated into two different cells. Another function of the cytoskeleton outside of the cell is to move the entire cell. Here's a quick video showing how flagella works.
Motile cilia and flagella are hair-like appendages of cells that generate fluid flow along tissues or allow cells to move through their environment. To better understand how these appendages generate motility, we flash froze sea urchin sperm cells while their flagella were actively beating, and then directly visualized the molecular machines inside the flagella through cryo-electron tomography. Thousands of motor proteins, called dyneins, are arranged regularly along the microtubule scaffold. Through classification, we identified several different functional states of the dyneins as they step along the microtubules. We demonstrate a detailed stepping mechanism. From the relaxed post-power stroke state, the dyneins release from the microtubule, swing forward, and rebind to the microtubule. During the power stroke, the cargo is pulled forward by the action of dynein. As long as ATP is present, dyneins continue to walk along the microtubule. However, if dyneins receive inhibitory signals, they can be kept in intermediate states that resemble the post-power stroke state.
So as you can see in this video, the inner dynein arms are walking along the microtubules, similar to how the organelles walk along the microtubules inside of the cell to make the cilia and the flagella thrust and spin, creating movement.
Another function of the cytoskeleton is to hold the organelles in place. This helps to maintain proper functioning within the cell so that the organelles are found in an important order and not all over the place. If they weren't like this, they wouldn't function properly and would never be in the same spot. Their function is purely structural. They bear tension, thus maintaining the shape of the cell and anchor the nucleus and other organelles into place. A comparison to this is in the human body. If our organs didn't stay in place and were able to move freely around our bodies, they wouldn't function properly, which would cause humans to not function properly. The last of the functions of the cytoskeleton is to strengthen the cells. By providing structural support inside the cells, it is able to add extra strength to them for movement. Actin filaments can be found beneath the cell cortex, which is where the proteins support and strengthen the plasma membrane. With this, cells are able to hold specialized shapes and move. As said before, actin is also involved in cytokinesis and cell movement.